Zach, David, thanks for joining me.
What's going on,
For
Steve?
having us, Steve.
What's going on is home sales. New home sales were up 10.9% in April. And before we jump into this news story, I want to remind folks to visit the website, selectfincap.com, and get on our free newsletter for real estate news and developments, as well as opportunities to get a look at exclusive commercial real estate investment opportunities. But turning back to the new home sales information, up 10.9% in April. What was unusual about April is typically builders are doing less incentives, and we also actually saw an increase in incentives. So that could have been driving this. In the overall market, existing home sales were actually down. But some of your guys' thoughts, as we've seen, is a pretty good uptick in new home sales, but it seems to have been driven by builders having to turn to incentives that they otherwise usually don't turn to in the current market.
So I think that's a very good point. And this is a nationwide trend, so I'm sure that it's skewed more positive or more homes in some areas and less in others. It's also across all home types. We've seen the upper upscale and luxury markets have been growing, where people have a lot more dry capital ready to deploy and are less concerned about interest rates or uncertainty. They see deals and they're willing to buy. So you do have a lot of movement in that segment of the market, which could contribute to this. But I think you're right. The biggest thing you're seeing here, no one's really buying houses, and you have this oversupply of inventory in certain areas that, builders are delivering new houses and they're not selling them. So what are they going to do? Sitting on a vacant house and carrying it for a long time is more expensive than giving the incentives to get people to come off the sidelines and actually pull the trigger. So I think that this is actually more of a negative news than a positive news. You've got so many incentives that it almost sounds like builders may be, breaking even or losing money, which is a negative trend, which leads to, a housing market crisis potentially in the short to medium term. So that's kind of how I interpret this is like, let's give you all the freebies to get you in here. We'll lose money. And, the next shoe to drop is going to be the crisis that is on the horizon.
My only thought on the whole thing is I wonder how inflation and tariffs are impacting the business or impacting that whole housing economy. Is Are these builders just trying to get rid of what they can, or are they doing it because they can do it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that because it's just so backward looking, we're just getting April data now, that you're not necessarily really seeing much of an impact from tariffs. And then we also had the issue with tariffs of people building up inventories beforehand. So we actually could be a little ways out from really seeing the data starting to show an impact. But I think to Zach's point, this does kind of point to the affordability crisis. There's clearly a need for housing. There's clearly a demand for housing, but it's not at the price point where the market's at. And to really move housing units, I think you have to see what we saw the builders do. You have to offer incentives to bring that price point down. So I think that's the real crisis we're looking at, is that there is a need and demand for housing, but there isn't the buying power in the market to really move forward at the price of what is really it taking to buy existing stock or to build a comfortable profit margins for stock. And I think that's kind of the friction we've got.
So do we think that they're on purpose losing money just to move inventory, for lack
I
of a
think
better
it's,
word?
I think it's cheaper than holding it vacant. You got to hold it vacant, and a lot of the builders are publicly traded. You got to report that on your balance sheet. That thing starts getting expensive. Shareholders are pissed off.
Yeah.
It's easier to dump them and make it up on a different sale than it is to hold them vacant. Plus, when you hold them vacant, you got to keep dumping money into them.
Yeah, and it may be, and there's always the question too of it may be just margin compression. They may be making less money, or also it may be that they're still on an operating basis making money until you get to the financing terms. But it's going to also be a little while before we kind of can delve into some of those builders' balance sheets if we want to for a future video and get a better sense of that. But what is not a question is that this definitely has hit profit margins for those builders for sure. And that's not their ideal world is to be offering
Yeah.
more incentives than they want to. But I think it points to a housing market that's still struggling. This is a big part of the economy, and it is still not in a great spot. Talk to any realtor in the residential sector. But for us, I think this does point to one of the reasons why we still see opportunities in multifamily as a residential kind of continues to struggle and people have a hard time getting into houses. We still think there's a lot of opportunities on the apartment side of things, which brings me to, hey, if you haven't yet, get on our website, selectfincat.com, register for the newsletter so you can see articles like this and exclusive commercial real estate investment opportunities, possibly in the multifam space, trying to take advantage of some of the challenges in housing affordability we're seeing. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't, and give us some comments. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining me today.